Hello, everyone. You're listening to Maryann from Random Sage. How are you all, wherever you are in the world when you're watching or listening to this? A huge shout out to you. I want to address the will there be peace? When are we going to get out of this cycle? I want to do that through this podcast. I want to take you over some of the recent happenings and why I believe that change is in our future, and it will be a change for the better, not more chaos or even worse, accelerating chaos and instability. All right, so let's look at let's go to the Middle East and look at what's been going on there. We've had the International Criminal Court between this podcast and my recent podcast have come out and said they're applying for warrants for arrests for war crimes for Hamas leaders and also for Netanyahu and his defense minister Gallant. And so there was a whole lot of consternation around that, a whole lot of outrage. How dare the war crimes of Hamas? How dare there be a moral equivalency with the supposed alleged war crimes for Israel? Well, it's Netanyahu and his foreign and his defense minister that's been charged. At the same time, we see mass protests in Israel calling for the end of this war, hostages being freed, and a change of government. And so the loud outrage is not shared. It's not shared by the people on the ground. Polls in Israel indicate the majority want an end to this war and hostages home. And why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they? Meanwhile, the International Court of Justice has made an order that, remember, they found there was a plausible genocide that could be taking place in Gaza, and they've said things are so dire. There's evidence that things are so dire in Gaza that we are ordering both sides to stop and hostages released. Despite that, Netanyahu has pushed on. Interesting that the ruling by the International Court of Justice has not been challenged by the US, though they do not recognize the International Criminal Court's jurisdiction. They do so on a case-by-case basis, but they're not recognizing this. Israel has said the International Criminal Court has no jurisdiction over Israel, but it does have over Gaza. Meanwhile, we have a growing chorus of European states and indeed the EU itself moving to condemn Netanyahu and also to recognise the state, officially recognise the Palestinian statehood. Added to that, in the last 24 hours from when I'm recording on the 27th of May in Australia, Netanyahu has bombed a Israeli refugee camp in Rafah. 20 people in tents. So basically the bomb fell on tents of refugees. And 20 innocent people have lost their lives, and many more are trapped under the burning rubble. Meanwhile, Israel has said they're going to investigate what's happened. I found it telling that the US has not commented or has not released any. It's been silent basically on the International Court of Justice's calls for immediate ceasefire and release of hostages. And we also know that the red line in the sand for the current US President Joe Biden was that Israel must not lay siege to Rafah, that everyone could see the potential for disaster to unfold. Meanwhile, Israel has seized the Rafah crossing between Egypt and Gaza, and Egypt has closed one side of their border and says we won't open this again until the crossing's controlled by UN, the United Nations aid agency, and not in the hands of Israel. There has been negotiations to open up another crossing so that aid can get in. Meanwhile, the US pier that was built by the US in rough seas, it has been all but destroyed and run aground. And so we see again more of the same that we've seen in the last 7 months. Hostages remain incarcerated. Hamas refuses to release them until a deal is brokered. And there have been many offers which have been rejected. The last one, I think, was rejected by Israel. And so Hamas has just said, look, we're not going to continue negotiations. This is just pointless and a waste of time. And so we really can't see where this is all going to end. And meanwhile, the starvation and the ICJ's fears of a plausible genocide unfolding continue. Now what? Now what? Even the US is silent on the latest ruling by the ICJ. Rafah was a red line, yet we see refugee tents being bombed. And again, the casualties and proportionality of war remains brutal and barbaric. I want to also move to highlighting what the astrology is telling us. Of course, we've had these major conjunctions over the eclipse season in April and May, and the conjunctions that we find ourselves facing in May. One of the biggest is Uranus in Taurus conjunct Algol being the demon star, fixed star. The head, literally, it means the head of the demon or the ghoul, and it portends destruction. Uranus is unpredictable energy at best, but it's also the energy of change. And we've had Pluto moving into Aquarius from Capricorn and marking a new era where the collective has more of a say, where the power is vested in the collective. And I mean, when I've read on this, the potential for so much good shines through in those astrology charts. But it also is about exposure of corruption and exposure of truth. If we go to something as seemingly innocuous as the New York Times, remember they ran a story on rape on around the October 7th attack, and of course that story has been found not to be accurate. They won a Pulitzer Prize, yet there's been no retraction of that story, other than to say that the consultant they were working with in Israel no longer works with them. So that's their way of saying that their story wasn't inaccurate, the story that they won a Pulitzer Prize for. At the same time, the New York Times is conducting polls which are finding that Trump is likely to win the election. And I watched Morning Joe with Joe Scarborough and Mika, I think is her name. And of course, he just tore apart the accuracy of that poll. And of course, he says every time they do this, where this is an accurate poll, that they're polling people who actually didn't even vote in the last election, let alone changing their vote how can they change their vote from Biden to Trump if they weren't voting in the election? So great holes are being exposed for the New York Times as well in relation to their pollings. Meanwhile, I did a reading on my other channel, Revealing Light Tarot, around Trump's heady days in his past, where he ran and was involved in the Look of the Year modeling competition, and judges on that, or a judge, David Copperfield, there, and the person that ran that modeling competition, both have been accused of let's just say, well, I can say sex crimes. No, Copperfield hasn't been charged yet. I want to make that clear. But another judge at the time in that modeling competition was the ex-president Trump. Now, all of this is taking place when I did that reading about a week later. We see one of the independent news channels, Midas Touch, bring up that same era and talk about Donald Trump trying to hide his past. There is a film being made about Trump in that time, and of course he's sent the filmmakers a cease and desist letter. He does not want his past around those years to be public, to be brought out again at this time. This comes against a backdrop of the Florida governor, Ron DeSantis, who's releasing some of the hidden Epstein files, legal files, which would include witness testimony. He's releasing them to the public on July the 15th. July the 15th. So, Epstein, Trump, Casablancas, Copperfield, Ghislaine Maxwell. Trump was certainly within that orbit. So we'll see. We'll see. So back to Pluto in Aquarius, massive exposure of the truth, massive exposure of corruption, and yes, hypocrisy and absurdity too. In fact, what we see, particularly in relation to the Middle East and to the candidacy again of Donald Trump, is absurd. It's so absurd. But what it is, this absurdity which defies logic, which shows us the rank corruption of our politics at this time, what all of that does is it heighten the mood for change. And so when Pluto moves back into Capricorn, unfortunately, at around, or fortunately, this is all part of the era that we live in, the change that is coming, the exposure that is needed. Pluto moves back into Capricorn at the time of the US election, in the lead up to and on the election. And so we are all anticipating the ex-president to have a go at another attempted coup, to attempt another coup. It won't be the same. Intuitively, what I see is planning already underway for a second coup, perhaps around the state level, around the certification of the vote. And they're going to have another try at it. They again will not be successful. And what happens to the ex-president after all of this, again, after a second loss, after the mayhem and brutality that he may bring forward, the potential for violence, he will slowly but surely burn himself out and away. This is a time of change. It is a time when the power comes to the collective, not to the individual. And it is up to the collective to save to save what they value the most. And there are enough people who value stability, not chaos, transparency, not lies, information, not misinformation. And so added into this mix is the media, social media. Pluto into Aquarius. Is it serving us well? We're moving into an era of AI. What are the guardrails around that? Well, unfortunately, I haven't seen many. And so this is a time of change for us, no matter which situation you go to. In the UK, they're desperate for change. Their economy is not delivering to families and individuals what they were promised when the UK withdrew from the European Union. And there's a mood there that the Conservative Party has sold them out and they're desperate for change. At the same time, we see unbelievably what might be going on with the royal family. There's been an announcement and I want to say the royal family is more than a figurehead in the UK. They are very much a part of the UK stability and also in the Commonwealth as well. We don't have a republic in our Commonwealth countries. The head of state is still the royal family. And so there is the royal family undergoing great challenges. There's today been an announcement or a story in one of the reputable media in the US, the Daily Beast, that the Princess Catherine, the Princess of Wales, will not be returning to the public for the rest of this year and is in fact surrounded by her birth family. Now, those vibes seem pretty ominous. And so we've had fake photos and questions around anything that the palace releases, whether it's actually been doctored, is it true? There's all these swirling conspiracy theories across the internet. And I must say, made worse by the fact that there hasn't been an independently verified sighting of Catherine, the Princess of Wales, since December 2023. And many of you know, I'm a cancer sufferer. I had colon cancer. I had major abdominal surgery. I had radiation and chemotherapy and more surgery. And I was back at work part-time. I think it was 2 days a week, 8 weeks after that surgery while I was undergoing chemotherapy. And I didn't stay at home. I was well enough to do that. And I was a lot older, well, not a lot older, about a decade older than Catherine, the Princess of Wales. And so we understand that whatever's wrong is fairly serious. And there is, for whatever reason, an obscuring of what is occurring there. And the king himself is undergoing his own cancer battles, has returned to work, as has Prince William. But this just adds to the instability for the UK. And wondering, is King Charles the last monarch of this time? There's a mood for change, and much that was hidden is coming to the surface. So let's just look into this change, not specifically in the UK, but across the world, whatever situation. Sudan, massive murdering death of Sudanese. Wherever we look, it seems Ukraine, Russia just bombing a supermarket at peak hour at a time when so many, I think I saw the figure up to 200 could have been in there. Death, destruction, Uranus, Algol. We could be forgiven for feeling that our human natures have failed us. And yet we are what we We are what we create reflects what we are. And so depending on where you're looking, you can see the beauty as well as the destruction of what we as human beings create. I do want to say that there are some prophecies of higher knowledges being given to us around 2026. And so I feel that by the time we get to 2026, that some of the desperate circumstances, desperate events that we see playing out have already come to pass, and we have some sort of renewal. We have the Council of Monarchs. Isn't that interesting? The Council of Monarchs. Council of Monarchs. That to me is higher beings. And I do feel this. I feel that this is a time where we are not alone, and that we have to look to our higher knowledge, our higher selves, to our faith in something, in our divinity, not our destruction. That is also a truth, great capacity for spiritual growth. So what do we need to know about the change we're undergoing right now? We have here the Two of Water, unity and coming together. The collective is more than just one, isn't it? The collective is about all of us, and you can see here emotions unite, they're not dividing. And we have the Hanged Man, needing to. This again is a great capacity for spiritual growth, because the light of awareness that mesmerizes this protagonist is awareness, is looking at something in a different way. The Seven of Earth, the Seven of Pentacles, the Seven of Earth. We cannot continue to do things, live in the same way, with all the absurdity and exposure and hypocrisy. We can't continue to do that. And so we have to find a new way. And we get the Lovers coming together, renewal of those organizations and structures across the world, empowering of them to do what is needed. And the Six of Earth, giving and receiving help, debt, repaying a debt. The earth has given us so much. And Queen of the Earth, stability, having everything we need, this period of change. And the Nine of Swords, a great deal of anxiety. Anxiety about the future, and this person is mesmerized by the butterflies that are coming up from the earth. A great deal of anxiety at this time. Are we moving toward greater stability for the earth, for the human beings that inhabit the earth? Are we moving toward a greater stability? The Nine of Cups. That's our goal. That's what we're wishing for. That's what we're hoping for. But we've got the Eight of Air. It's around the belief in ourselves, the restrictions that we impose on ourselves, the webs that are cast, that we fall into, around the belief. What do we believe? Do we believe in our higher selves, or do we believe in a lower version of ourselves? We get the Four of Fire, reunions coming together with our higher self. We get the Eight of Pentacles. It's going to take everyone's collective talents to get there. In a way, we're being an apprentice in this new age. A great deal of reflection, soul searching, the dark night of the soul, but there's light coming through after death. Death, transformation, and renewal, and we get justice. It absolutely did have to happen, and we know that. We know that deep down in our souls, that what is occurring now was a fated cycle, and that we're all here on this earth at this time to participate in this cycle. And then we get manifestation, magician card. What are we manifesting? Manifesting new growth, new growth. The 9 of Wands is at the base of this pack. Loss, threat, but a willingness to put up those guardrails. We are learning a lot. We are learning and developing. Not all of us, but enough of us. One more card, please. One more card. The 3 of Fire, the 3 of Wands. Putting in the work, waiting for our ship to come in. Expectation after the battle. And so there is indeed enough evidence of the change that is occurring, which will last the evidence we will remember throughout our lifetime. This time will be very clear why things had to occur in the way that they did, why we had to have the loss of life, why we had to change. It's going to be very clear, but we come through that and we look expectantly to the future, to a new horizon. All right, thank you for tuning in. You're listening to Maryann, and this is Random Sage. Thank you.